All right. It's uh it's the next episode, episode 2 of Mark Talks Rocks. And this is take 2 actually because I just did about 5 minutes 5 minutes of this program and realized that I was I was on this camera angle the whole time I was talking, so you guys probably didn't want to be looking at my tape. You guys probably you guys probably didn't want to be looking at my table the whole time I was talking. I don't know, maybe you did. But anyways, in this episode we're going to talk about uh the different types of rocks that I find on the beaches and we all find on these EUP beaches. Um Maybe the differences between like some of the stuff they find in Minnesota in contrast with some of the stuff we find over here. There's uh there's often times I find in the EUP it's not as clear cut and dried that when you ask the question, is this an agate? Like as much it is as it is in Minnesota. Granted, there is lots of that going on in Minnesota with beginning rock hounders too. You know, is this an agate? Well, it's chert or there, but there's a spectrum, and I think we're a little bit over farther in one direction or another on the spectrum in the EUP of of equivocation on whether something is an agate or not, because a lot of times there's rocks that over here that maybe you could call them low quality agates or oddball agates, oddity agates. Um, Full disclosure, sometimes I just call them junkers. I find one and I'm like, this, well, it's a junker. And sometimes I leave it on the beach. I've heard the term leverite, because sometimes you have these minerals and they end with ITE. That's I think that's a chemistry thing, isn't it? Ending something, a mineral with ITE, or maybe it's a geology thing, like siderite or something like that. And sometimes rockhound will ask another rockhound, what do you think this rock is? What is this, an agate? And someone would say, look at the rock and say, well, that's a leverite. Leverite? I've never heard of that rock. Well, it means you leave her right there where you found it. Ha ha ha. But, anyways, there's a lot of that stuff going on, especially when you're more a beginner. But even still, even to this day, every time I go to the beach, I find something. I'm like, what is this? Is It's kind of an agate. It's very interesting. And sometimes you'll find rocks that are they're so interesting that you can't even leave them on the beach. Like, I gotta keep this. This is, and there's, and for me in my fantasy mind, I'm like, I gotta keep this. This could be worth something. This, I could show this to some geologist, and they'll say, "This is so rare that it's priceless, and we've been looking for this forever," or something. I don't know. Or there's gold in there. That's a type of diamond, and but it's that never happens. But there's a part of my mind that goes there sometimes. But I know a couple geologists, and from what I've heard them tell me, if you're just doing a visual inspection of some of the stuff on the beaches, or if they are, it doesn't take them long to say, well, I'm just as stumped as anybody at identifying what this is, because upon visual inspection, That's only a part of the steps to identifying rocks and minerals. They would do things if they really want to get a positive ID, things like a spectroscopy, scanning tunneling microscope, where they grind up a little portion of the rock into a powder, and then they put it in the scanning tunneling electron microscope, and they that'll give them a readout of every element, I think, element and mineral, or both, one or the other. I'm not sure, of what's in that particular rock. That way they can make a positive identification of the rock. And but just leaving it to visual inspection, like I said, the geologists I've spoke to, they're like, it only takes us 5 minutes looking at rocks on the beach to be just as stumped as the next guy. Like, it could be anything, but there is a steps and processes, even with visual identification, to weed out what it's not. And but enough of me talking, man. Let's start looking at these rocks, man. Let's get down to some looking at rocks. This first rock I'm going to show you is a rock that Noah, my cousin Noah, and his girlfriend Marilyn found. They gave it to me because I said I might be able to ask somebody, like a geologist, what it was. And I ended up showing this to a geologist before, and he was like, "That's wild, man." He's like, "You, I don't know. That is very interesting how those formations on that rock happened. I haven't the slightest right now on what or how that could have happened." And I will attempt to show you some of the stuff I can see in this rock. It's depending on how my camera 2 goes. But let's check it out. All right. Here we go. Look at these rings of purple on this rock. How did those get there? If I could get it a little closer, you could see in the middle there's kind of like quartz crystals in the middle of these purple things. But it's not showing up too well right now. And they seem to be in ring formations. But this is definitely an interesting rock. It's weird. Would you leave this on the beach? Comment. Anybody have any clues? Any theories they want to posit? Is that a word? Posit? Did I use that right? About what this could be. What those purple rings are. I'm going to go ahead and say no to amethyst. That looks more like fluorite to me. Maybe? And what is this matrix? Matrix is like the main rock. If you have more than one mineral in a rock, it's the overall type of rock that is encompassing everything within it. And as far as the matrix, as far as what this rock is mostly composed of, I haven't the slightest. But it's a weird rock. It's a weird rock, man. Telling you. But yeah, in the comment sections, it'd be kind of cool if anybody has any theories. I'd like to hear them. And Let's see. But definitely wasn't an agate. Another type of rock that's common in the EUP is rock that's made out of rocks from long ago that have broken apart and fused back together like with some other mineral like glue. There's a mineral like glue that would put them to get back together. And a lot of the times, the stuff in between the rocks that's gluing everything together is agate stuff. And they call, when I first looked up the term, I thought it was pronounced brecciated, but then I Googled the word and I hit pronounce on the Google and it said brecciated. And then I heard it also pronounced breccia, brecciated. So I'm not really sure the correct uh, pronunciation of that, but I usually say brecciated, and these are common types of things we find in the EUP. Let's check one out, man. Look at this rock. See now, the brownish green stuff, is what I believe to be basalt. And the stuff in the middle, why, that's agate. You know? There's the red. Ooh, come on, camera. There's the red. And there's like white, which is probably quartz. These cameras, I messed with the autofocus, and there's a few different settings of autofocus, but this one that seems to work correctly so far is like called the eye tracking, even though there's no eyes to track on this camera, just rocks. And but I'll eventually perfect the system as time goes by and I get time to fiddle with the camera settings more. I haven't had time to do that. I'm literally very, very busy. But agate in the middle, basalt, like a basalt broke all apart and it got put back together. And these are really interesting. Like some more than others. Like this one, when I found this, it's like, yeah, not leaving that on the beach. I've actually polished a few of these, and they polish up really nicely, and it really brings out more of the features. And there's a lot of patterning in these small basalt parts, like different shades of green and stuff that come out when you polish it. And also in the shades of green, when you polish that green basalt, a lot of times little tiny flecks of gold color, which I'm going to assume is pyrite, will show up in that green as well. Sparkles of gold. And really cool. Really cool. And here's a agate that my friend Kathy gave to me. And the agate was mostly quartz and of a type us agate people call it fragmented membrane agate. And this, she gave me a big one. It was like 6, 7, maybe 7, 8 ounces. And she's like, you could have this and do something with it. And so I did. And I made it into a sphere. It had some basalt attached to it too. And when I made it into a sphere, the only one little piece of basalt was left, and the rest was the very quartzy, fragmented membrane agate. You got to check this out, how it turned out, because it's kind of funny, actually. And I was always thinking of selling this rock to somebody who somebody might get a kick out of it. And I don't know, maybe I'd do a giveaway or something sometime because it's a funny rock. It's I call it the eyeball. Check it out. Ta-da! The eyeball. This is that. This is that basalt that's left on it. Chunk of basalt, and it's just a quartzy membrane agate. Mostly quartz. Got these little, I don't know what that is. Tubes, maybe? Maybe it's a tubey agate. Tubey, quartzy. But the overall effect, though, man. The overall effect gives it a kind of an impression of an eyeball, don't you think? Really weird. I don't know. I should sell it on eBay. Someone will buy this thing. I think it's a interesting sphere though. Like being able to my friend Eric Rintamaki's got a sphere machine, so I go over there and mess around with it sometimes. Sometimes I'll find interesting rocks on the beach and I'm like, "Hey, I want to make a sphere out of that." So, I do. And this one is funny. It's a funny rock, the eyeball, man. Yeah. And I remember this time I was hunting on up by Grand Marais. Lots of Grand Marais, Michigan. Lots of great rocks up there. And when it comes to the EUP, you EUP hunters ever notice that towards Whitefish Point, there's more smaller, more water washed agates, some bigger agates, and some not as water washed over in the towards Whitefish Point. But the farther west you go, it seems like the agates get a little bigger, but oftentimes less water washed. There's still very water washed agates you could find over towards Grand Marais, I think, but the incidence of them is reduced in proportion to how many not so water washed agates there are. The water washing gets less, agate size gets bigger the farther west you go. And that's just my observation, but I don't know. Maybe people with more hunting experiences have found that to be not true. But I was hunting over there one time, and I found this next one, and I wasn't even sure it was an agate, but I kept it because it was one of those strange rocks, man. Check it out. See, I think I seen these little bands on there, and I'm like, "Wow, is that an agate?" But then I could see this little patterning right here, like feathery patterning, and I'm like, those are like some sort of crystals, man. And I kept it, and I brought it over to Eric's garage, I sliced it open. And then when I sliced it open, I was like, whoa, look at that. What is that? It's almost like a thunder egg or something. Strange. Is it an agate? It could be. Is it a geode? It could be. How close can I get it to this camera? This camera is like a wild animal. I can creep closer with my subject and it'll keep focusing. And I don't want to scare it off into not focused land. Just keep focusing, camera. If I be nice and gentle and quiet, this camera will focus. I could get really close to it, like a wild animal. But then I get too close and it runs away out of focus. But anyways, cool rock, hey? I think I sold the other half of this rock to my friend Ian, because he definitely gets a kick out of weird rocks too. Some people just like the high quality pure agates. High quality pure agates that are, showstoppers. But there's other people that find these things that defy explanation interesting as well. But anyways, that's that rock. And got lots of that strange stuff in the EUP. What is it? I don't know. Each one is different. That's what makes it fun. Go out there and find what you can find. I remember one day I was on the beach with Noah, man. He's all excited. When you get to the beach, man, you get the spirit and you get excited. He's like, these beaches, man, they got so much stuff on them. I bet you if you look hard enough at any time on one of these beaches, you could find a diamond. You could find a ruby. You could find anything on these beaches, man. There's gold on these beaches. I was like, wow, man, he's fired up today. He's fired up, man. But I was thinking about that. I was like, maybe he's right. On any given day, you could find a diamond on these beaches. Maybe I found one, but not a big, fat, fist-sized diamond or anything like that. I know that. But I have found lots of cool stuff. On to more cool stuff. Here's another one. Another one where I found it and I'm like, hey, it could be an agate. And then I got it wet. I was like, I don't know. Is this an agate? Oh, look at that in there. Sparkly little thing. It's a little geode of some sort in there. But then there's green stuff. I can't get close to this camera. It gets scared away out of focus. Oh, there we go. But I was like, I have to keep this. Look at those, they're like crystal formations right there. It's pretty cool, man. Is it an agate? I don't know. Cool colors, though. It's kind of like aqua. The aqua agate. I had to keep it. I found this on a beach that BB, my wife, has deemed. She named the beach. We all name our beaches, right? Certain beaches. Well, this beach she had named Bullshit Beach. Sorry for the language, but that's what she called it. I've been calling it that ever since. Because she went down there and she had made her judgment about that beach. She'd made her judgment about that beach. She usually makes her judgment about a beach about 5 minutes in. Anybody else do that? You go to a beach you haven't been to before, and you're like, "Well, this beach is awesome," or "This beach is gonna suck." And the first time we were at that beach, about 5 minutes in, she said, "This beach is bullshit, Mark. There's no agates here. I can't find nothing." I'm like, "Dude, we've been here like 5 minutes, man." And another one. "There's already tracks here." that's a that's another big alarm, man. You guys do that? "There's tracks here already." So there's people on this beach. Somebody's been here. Or even if you're like on a beach all by yourself and you're having fun, and then you round this point and you get around the point and you're looking at the rocks and you get around the point and you look up and off in the distance, oh, a person. There's a person down there. Darn it. I'm gonna have to turn around. This beach has been tainted. Well, might as well not hunt now. There's all these things, man, and I don't I'm not like that, man. I Sometimes there's some, that's initial reaction, but in reality, it don't matter if there's other people on the beach, man. Nobody can see every rock. Nobody. Nobody can see every rock. And we all know somebody who also has a story. Furthermore, who has a story. They found an agate right in somebody's track. So the whole "there's already tracks here" or "oh, there's people on this beach," that's just the way it goes, man. It's the way it goes. But ideally, in an ideal world, we all want to have that beach that's all ours, our own precious little private beach. But that's getting to be less and less these days, and it's okay. I think it's okay. Um, yeah, and there's wait a minute. I got another rock too. I was reading geology books when I was first into this stuff, and I was learning about where basalt forms. And I think they said basalt forms above the earth. It dried above the surface of the crust, and like granite is solidifies below the surface, and the crystal structure is different in each one of those. The basalt has smaller grain structure. The basalt has larger grain structure in anything that forms way inside. And I think I remember them saying like agate doesn't form inside granites and things, but lo and behold, I think I found a seam of agate sandwiched between two pieces of some sort of basalt. Check it out. All right. So this is, I think, a seam agate. Very quartzy, granted, but nevertheless agate. And I think it appears to me that this is some sort of basalt. This isn't the best example, maybe even some sort of unikite, which used to be or some sort of granite, I meant, and maybe even unikite, which I think used to be some sort of granite, but it metamorphosized. Is it metamorphized or metamorphosized? But anyways, yeah, and sea maggot in between there, but I could be wrong. Interesting rock, though. Let's see. A lot of the agates are smaller from the EUP. You guys want to check out a Minnesota agate? Here. I got a couple right now that are laying around. Here's a colorful little one. Ooh. And then I'll compare it to like a EUP agate or something. Here's a couple Minnesotas. Minnesota agates, man, they're big, man. Not all the time, but the incidence and the occurrence of larger agates, I think, happens much more often in Minnesota. Those lucky dogs. Yeah, some Minnesota agates can be massive, and they're really cool too. Let's check some out. Here's the Minnesota agate. Look at that beast. Holy, my camera's like, I'll focus on that. I just realized my number 2 camera likes Minnesota agates more. Hey, camera 2, you like this Minnesota agate, don't you? Look at those nice colors on that husk, man. I see some purples and yellows in there and some oranges. Lots of different colors. I know that I have some EUP friends that are EUP purists, and they always say that the EUPs are more colorful, which oftentimes they are very colorful, but as an absolute statement that they're more colorful than others, I don't know. I don't think so. I think oftentimes Minnesota's agates have some tremendous colors in them. Look at those purples. Sometimes they tend to be more muted. The Minnesota agates colors can be muted and dark a little bit, but not always. Sometimes they look like Fruit Loop colors and stuff. But this is a big, beautiful Minnesota agate. If you find an agate in the EUP this big, ooh, look at that thing. That's pretty too. If you find an agate in the EUP like this, you're having a good year. You're having a good year, man. To find an agate like this big in the EUP, man, does not happen very often. Very rarely. Most collectors I know have less than 10 agates that they've ever found this big from the EUP. Many don't even have any that they've ever found this big. Let's check out another one. Here's a little Minnesota agate, and you see how these due to being pushed into the earth over in Minnesota, they get tend to get roughed up a little bit. So the edges are they're have a lot of sharper edges because they haven't been smoothed out by the lake as much. Sometimes maybe Minnesota agates haven't even been in Lake Superior. Because they formed way before Lake Superior did. And maybe these things have floated around and got water washed by ancient oceans and things of that nature. And not Lake Superior. They got water washed by an ancient ocean. And so oftentimes, due to the last ice age, the Minnesotas can have sections and their agates will be a little bit more rough around the edges. But here's a nice one that's not very rough around the edges from Minnesota. But it's not as worn down as some EUPs either. But man, look at those pretty colors in that thing, man. Purples and pastels, and it's definitely a nice rock. If you found an agate this big even in the EUP, this would probably be your trip maker. Trip maker is a term I was told by Noah that my uncle, his dad, my Uncle George made up, because we have to travel at least an hour to get to the proper beaches to find EUP agates. I'll show you an EUP agate now that I found. This one's water washed. And Noah said his dad used to say when they'd go camp up in those beaches, they'd go on a camping trip and they would hunt for agates. And at some point, someone would find a really good one. And Noah's dad would say, "There it is, the trip maker. That's the agate that makes this trip all worth it." And this one, when I found this was indeed the trip maker. This was the year maker. This was like the best one I found in a long time, man. I was really, really, really happy to find this. This was definitely a trip maker, and Noah got really jealous, I think. But then he turned around and found one just as good 5 minutes later. He always does that to me. He'll either find a better one, one just as good or better. But yeah, this is a really beautiful one. Very nicely water washed, high contrast. High contrast with the reds and the whites. Beautiful, beautiful agate. That will remain in the collection. And but anyways, I'm looking at my clock here, and it's about that time. But it was a fun little episode. Got to save some material for talking some other time. And I'm going to try to upload this today before I got to go to Mackinac Island and play music for people. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Mark Talks Rocks. And like I said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment sections, and I will try to answer them in episodes in the future. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and try to get out there at some point and hunt for some rocks. Okay, have a good day, you guys.